Apologies, I can only stay on for about 45 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Doris.
Thank you.
Hi, Victoria. We just started. I'm just gonna the bell keeps ringing.
I'll get it on the next meeting. Stephanie, when I left the meeting last time, I went to I went to Vesuvio's and your friend was there. Carlson.
So we're live streaming. Okay, Stephanie.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. This is a meeting of the Zoning and Land Use Committee, and it is June 11th. This evening, we will be formulating our recommendation regarding the City of Yes housing opportunity. I wanted to give a quick recap of June 4th's meeting, Tuesday night, for those of you who weren't there or didn't have an opportunity to see it. Very well attended meeting. I think, according to Josephine, approximately 700 people were in attendance. Many of the concerns, and there were many of the attendees got up to speak and provide comment. There were also additional comments that Josephine counted through emails. There were 25 emails, 10 people walked in, there were 20 calls, and then there were 10 survey forms. All of those were unfavorable responses to the City of Yes. Many of the concerns that were raised echoed the concerns that we've discussed, very much similar. In fact, if there are additional ones, I will go through those comments again and pull them out. There were, just to balance this out, 2 emails in support of the proposal, and then 1 resident at the meeting spoke of his support for the proposal. Councilmember Brannan was present, and he stated that he would vote no for this proposal if presented to him as is. And I just wanted to remind everyone that our recommendations for the last component, economic opportunity, when we met with Councilmember Brannan and the City Council Land Use Committee, we were able to present them with our modifications, and a majority of those modifications made it into the proposal and were voted on just recently. So I want you to keep that in mind, please, as we proceed this evening and try to come up with our recommendation. I am going to, well, we can begin discussion, but I would like to make a suggestion regarding the recommendation. And as before, we have 4 options. It's favorable, favorable with conditions, unfavorable, and unfavorable with conditions. My suggestion is we proceed as we did last time and give an unfavorable recommendation, but then give our comments as we did before regarding each of the components of the proposal. And then if we need to flesh them out, then we can order them according to priority, maybe our top 4 or 5 concerns. Having said that, I have the list in front of me, but I'd like to open it up to the committee for feedback.
I have a question, Stephanie. What's the difference between a negative with considerations and a positive with considerations?
I mean, it's a great question. It might be in the way it's perceived by city planning that a yes is a resounding support for the proposal.
So it's more of a leaning one way or the other, but still considerations.
Would you say that?
Yeah, I mean, similar to, I think, how we review liquor license applications. We deny unless the following stipulations are agreed to. And that is really, many years ago when that was put into place in terms of formatting, was really to convey that there were significant concerns about certain aspects of the application. And I think that's kind of similar here. to convey to city planning, if that's what the committee and the board, decides to do, is to say, we have these, significant concerns or these concerns or these modification requests. When city planning has, when they speak about the plan, they do speak in terms of favorable and unfavorable, not necessarily conditions.
Yeah, I think favorable with condition generally means that you support the proposal. And then you have additional thoughts, which frequently can be saying, well, we don't think the proposal goes far enough, that you should go have more density, say, in this particular case, or there should be, more allowances for bigger buildings. It doesn't, of course, stop you. You can say we're generally in favor, but this one piece of it, we don't think is a good idea. I mean, it's really at the discretion of each board to decide what they want to do. But if you're saying you're favorable, it generally means that for the most part, you're supporting the proposal, and here are comments.
So if it's in favor, then it's more of a tweak to what's been proposed.
Well, not necessarily a tweak, but sort of your thoughts beyond, you say in general you support it, and then your thoughts beyond that about where the proposal is going and whether there are additional things you thought the proposal should have done that it doesn't do, that type of thing.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
I just wanted to thank Anne also for summarizing the many comments from the other evening. You should have received those in an email yesterday, compiling all of the resident comments from June 4th.
You're very welcome.
Much appreciated. Okay, I thought we would break it down. Would anyone else like to comment on how we should proceed? I thought we'd break it down by section as it was given to us.
I could share that screen.
Sure. So even before we speak about this, certainly as I present to the full board, I'd like to mention the contextual zoning that was put in place previously and highlight that it worked well. Barry found two CPC statements that I'll read just the beginning of one of them. This is regarding the 2005 rezoning for Bay Ridge. The commission believes that this amendment to the zoning map and the related text amendments to the special Bay Ridge district, both as modified, are appropriate, recognizing that the proposed lower density and contextual zoning districts together with amendments to the special Bay Ridge district text would preserve the treasured neighborhood character and scale of Bay Ridge. The commission believes that the proposed lower density and contextual zoning districts together with the special Bay Ridge district amendments provide the best possible protection to preserve the scale and character that are so highly valued by Bay Ridge residents. So it's worth highlighting this and questioning what's happened. Why is there an issue now with this? Why is it necessary to undo what was done in a collaborative process? In addition to that, I will be mentioning the environmental impact statement. Those of you who were there or listened to the meeting know that this was a point of contention, that we disagree with the rigor or maybe the lack thereof in the EIS, and it's definitely worth highlighting this as well. Barbara, is your hand up or no? Going forward, then I thought we would start with the low density. Do we want to do this? Do we want to come to a recommendation, an overall one first? Or do you want to go, no, part by part?
I would go, category by category and then develop our overall recommendation. As far as I'm concerned, I would not recommend any of this because it's really bad. But that's besides the point. That's my vote on my own vote. But I'd say go by their boxes. Let's check them off. I'm sure we're all going to come up with the same ideas.
Just to be clear, what the ultimate goal is not to vote on each of them. We're going to have an overall vote, but it's helpful then in the end to have comments and recommendations on the particulars.
Oh, I understand. These
Okay, I
aren't
just-
really votes. I know. Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Thank you
So
and stuff.
according to their chart, low density. So the district fixes are the, are you, do you know what I'm talking about when I say that?
She's going to put it up now. Okay.
In the order that we discussed them. Do you want me to show this? The slide that we prepared for district fixes? Or?
Oh, is that easy enough to pull?
I think I could do that.
So these are all the changes. This is the changes to 1 to 2 family homes, the ability to become 2 family or 3 family homes, the side yards, rear yards, all the technical changes that the EIS didn't necessarily explain why, to what end these were being implemented.
Wait, can everyone see it? I'm sorry. I'm having a bit of technical difficulty here. It's okay, got it. Sorry.
Oh, perfect. Oh, this looks familiar.
District fixes, okay.
So basically their suggestion for district fixes affects, all Staten Island, Southern Brooklyn, and Queens, varying densities. But in these, so these would affect space, open space, air, light, increase in floor area ratio, the number of units within a zoning lot could increase, and the implications for this are, you end up with more smaller units. This could potentially increase cost of housing, because if a developer can put more in one spot and garner more rent, it's logical to deduce that.
The free market will not decrease housing costs. They have to be put in place by government to have affordable housing. The free market, if you're on a trajectory, will always stay on that trajectory, no matter what they do here. So this is all a joke when it comes to, lowering housing costs. We know it won't.
Right, and ultimately, there is no affordability component with the district fixes. And, there's no real explanation as to what these particular things achieve, why from 30 feet to 20 feet, reduction or elimination of side yard, and on and on. I know this lists parking mandates and ADUs, but I've got that separate category.
I think the problem is that they're making these changes which could change very much the character of neighborhoods all across the city, with it being very unclear as to why they are doing this and what they expect to happen as a result. There's some thought about saying, well, some people's houses don't conform today to the existing regulations. But it's very unclear where that's the case. And it's very unclear how many people they expect to take advantage of these changes. I mean, what will happen with these changes? So
it appears to me that they've taken a lot of these reforms from other programs in other cities. The ADU reform, some of the basement stuff, some of the. I actually watched this on Channel 13 a week ago, and I was shocked. I was like, "Oh wow, I didn't know they stole it from somewhere else." But what really disturbed me was the thing Josephine sent earlier, that talked about air rights that no one really spoke about the other day.
Of the transfer of air rights?
That's like creating like a carbon market. You know what? Instead of carbon, you're going to sell air rights. That is like that's the big giveaway. All this other stuff is window dressing. I mean, yeah, they could do some damage here, but if they can get on, for me, most what Bay Ridge is, when you see Bay Ridge, is you're coming up from the subway. And what you notice immediately is there's air. When you get up the station on 69th or 77th or 86th, what you see is sunshine, blue sky. And that's what they're coming for. They're coming for air rights.
Well,
That's my opinion on this.
The proposal is that it's linked to landmark buildings, that they can trade their air rights.
Yeah, but it's also linked to other structures as well. And I'm sure once you stick that in there, it could be easily done.
Yeah, we're not sure what you're referring to. The buildings, the heights get higher, so the buildings get taller. So in terms of, lack of light and air, you have a tall building, but that isn't really selling air rights. The air rights issue for landmarks is really mostly a Manhattan issue. It's not, we don't have that many landmarks, and the problem in Board 10 is that even when you do have a landmark, there's not, because the densities are much lower than you have in Manhattan, there's not a lot of air rights to transfer.
Josephine,
Okay.
can you show the screen share that you had on the screen a moment ago?
Sure. This slide?
Yes, yeah. I would agree with Carmela that I hate the whole thing. It's infuriating even to have to be here. I mean, not me, but all of us. It's infuriating. However, I don't think we can say that we don't understand how building heights, side yard requirements, rear yard requirements, FAR, and the other things, all those things, don't actually truly allow for more affordable housing, or more housing anyway. Because if I put an extension on the back of my house and built up, I could potentially enjoy as many square feet as I enjoy now, while also accommodating an ADU. So if we're going to object to this, I think it's not logical to say that we don't understand how it helps affordable housing.
But there is no affordability component.
There's no requirement.
Okay.
Some of the proposals have an affordability
Okay.
requirement. This does not have. So you can make this expansion without an affordability unit created.
And there's no mandate to actually put more people in the house. You can just enlarge your house, which.
There's no affordability mandate in any of this.
Well,
It's suggested.
no, in some of the districts, which are not the homeowner districts, you get additional development rights if you include affordable housing in your development.
But it's not required.
Well, it's not required, but you don't get the bump up if you don't include the affordable housing.
Understood.
So are there particular things you'd like to focus on when it comes to the district fixes and identifying your real issues with it?
I would say no to all of this.
Thank you.
I don't even know how to take this apart. If you walk, we just took this outside on my street in front of my house, you would see how absurd this is. I
Okay,
live on a block of attached homes, all brownstone type homes. If you just take this and look at our homes and you say, wait a second, what are you going to allow people to do as of right? How does this make better sense for me? Right?
yes, well, several times in preparing for these meetings, I have enumerated over and over again, the issues that we have with each of these components. I'm opening up to discussion because you told me you wanted to go through each of the components. So here we are. I just wanted to know if you would like to add, if the committee thinks that, you know, what are its top 3 egregious issues with district fix-it? If we're going component by component, I got it. You don't like it. I
Well,
mean,
I'd
if you
say
want-
accessory dwelling units is at the top of the list.
Okay. We're not on ADUs yet, but district fixes.
Okay, but it's
We'll
in
go-
there.
It is, and we can jump to the next one. I mean, if you just want to leave it to me to, you know, put together something, based on our numerous meetings with Barry, and he's been just a font of knowledge. He's been great, and I have it all.
Stephanie, I don't think you should have to do it alone. I think we should buckle down here.
We should buckle down and figure out what the top 3.
People like me should stop whining and
No,
just. I mean, I'm talking to myself. I'm talking to myself about that. So for this one, I don't even like the title. District fixes implies that there's something wrong with the district. So that's the first thing. District does not require fixing. All of the aspects under this category are simply fly in the face of the low scale, etc., whatever we're going to say. But we object to all of those because they undermine what we feel we want to see as the future of our community board.
Okay.
That wasn't well stated, but
That was very clear.
All district fixes does is add density.
yes,
That's it.
that the most by enlarging their dream.
Right. House more people.
All right.
CB10 add a little bit more, they would just add, I know, but there are people who.
Versions, I know it's our turn.
I know it's valedictorian. We need to just get through each of them. I know you won't forget, so we could go on to ADUs.
Yeah.
Sure. The quality, there are no regulations about how this can be dated, that it has to be only families in the 800 square feet. I know that CPC you spoke to said that with regard to maybe even DEP, they just don't have them yet.
They don't, may never be.
Here, to get DEP doesn't think it's a problem.
I think they mentioned that they funding develop the code, but it's on their website.
Hi, Ibrahim.
I'll take a snapshot.
What is concerning, he asked to approve this, and with the rules are
Right.
being developed about how you rules first, so they can explore how they make what the fire department needs to look at it and say, okay, yeah, this is workable. Yes, you can do it, and then
It's 1,300 pages.
I do think, aside, a lot of these things do, a front door, a developer onto, but, you're going down the driveway, you don't expect to walk in front of your car the minute, street. So, so the roadway would seem like,
But Barry just said many of my, they're very, very serious in them, and without any regulation acceptable.
Sorry to be joining late. Just spoken about how in driveways, and that this is to a shared with their garage, but it is really a shared exit. Issues that may come up dwelling in that, it's then up to the individual, this ADU, but yet base. For all of our condos, for all of our in the back. It's like in the drawing, like, they had like that grandma is going to go down her family property to get, in passing 6 other garages on the,
Right.
constituents. That I don't think would be, I think it would be such a bad idea where the code, light and air, ceiling height, whatever, perhaps in order to be, does floor area could be eliminated, where everyone could have if you establish apartment in your basement, not cellar, in your basement, you have to, it counts towards your total floor area. If that relief were, more dwelling units could be established in basements. However, I think that the requirement for parking for the additional unit, whether it's in the basement or wherever it is, ought to be required to have the parking space that goes with the unit.
I know you specify that code compliance would have to exist because there
Yes.
are concerns about flooding that have been illustrated already in the past with fatalities. At this time, I don't think basements are eligible for.
They're not eligible for ADUs.
Right.
Basements and cellars are not.
Say
They're-
again, Barry?
Basements and cellars are not eligible for ADU.
Well, cellars for sure, but do in a basement?
That's what it said.
I wonder why.
I think because of the code issues.
Or a 7-foot ceiling height and have sufficient apartments that exist. If we can, I can pull back.
I just think the proposal, somewhere it specified that basements were not eligible for ADUs, and I don't know if that, there's a
I
state.
think they
law-
have another program for basements, doing a
Yeah.
trial program, and I forgot a few different areas.
We haven't
And,
been-
I'm
I think
sorry?
I think that's coming to us.
Okay.
But I think we should be aware of it and make our concerns part of our comments, because I think it's there, I think it's vague. Because
Okay.
if most of us thought it was there, there's a reason for that. So I think we should include it. It doesn't have to be dominant, but it should be part of the process.
It may be that the words are there, but it's waiting for state approval. There's some sort of,
Right, yes, so there, I think we're right to have concerns. And I have to say sorry, but I've gotta go.
thank you, Doris.
Sorry, I had a prior commitment.
Thank you. Have a good night. Barbara?
Yeah, I'm concerned that this is, in general terms, specifics haven't been described, and unless this is put into effect, could be. We need more specificity from these folks. And the whole question of ADUs, such a shared driveway.
Thank you. Question, your hand is still up?
Yeah, I had, the other question was when we had the City of Yes for Economic Opportunity, we had like a simple Dropbox of like, yes, we agreed, or no, we did not agree, like that it was very, or yes, with, there were like certain ways for us to endorse or not endorse the economic opportunity. And so our recommendation was a clear no. So I'm asking, is this the same situation where we, that there's expected for us to fill out a Dropbox survey, a drop-down survey that we had? It was some kind of like a Google form, wasn't it, Josephine?
We have the same thing now.
They provided that to us, but we can, what we did for economic opportunities, we provided a recommendation. And then we outlined specific concerns regarding each of the, 14 in one resolution. Which.
But we reported no, and then we added our recommendations. Wasn't that correct?
Yes, we didn't do like whatever it was, 12 or 13 specific different, no, we didn't do that. We did one vote, one motion. And that's how it was submitted.
So then this too becomes like Stephanie already has it outlined in what she prepared and shared with all of the reasons that the committee had found questions and had concerns that they brought up that really were in line with what we were hearing from the vast majority of people at our meeting. They, although it may not seem like it at times, they were very much in agreement with what they were saying. They just really wanted a place to make their voices heard as well. And it was very challenging at times, but we really did hear from 47 people who were able to speak that night, and that there were about 700 present. And as I said, the vast majority were not in favor, but we're just trying to outline what the recommendations are. That's what my understanding is. So I think we already really have like so much to go on.
We do. I wanted to give the committee an opportunity to talk it out, but also to make specific recommendations, if there were any. I had spoken with Dean, who cannot be here tonight, specifically backtracking a bit to district fixes. I guess this would fit into it. He wanted to include a statement about eliminating any changes to 1 and 2 family districts, basically expunging any of those changes from the proposal. So I wanted to put that out there for the committee to hear. I know Anne had just mentioned basements vis-a-vis the ADUs, but if there are other specific recommendations in terms of our concerns, again, we've been consistent, and we are consistent with the public. I have them all listed. I have them in many different Google Docs. I am willing to compile them and hopefully make them succinct for us to submit with our recommendation. But this evening, as we go through them, if there's anything else, if there's a particular recommendation, not just the concerns, that's what I would like to hear. And so moving on from ADUs, the next one is transit-oriented development. I don't know if everyone, you've heard it before. If you have any questions about it, please just let me know. But Josephine, do you have that slide? It has the parameters or the specific criteria. What properties are eligible for this transit-oriented development?
I think even one of our commenters at the meeting the other night made the point that the R train alone is the only subway line. I think there was some reference specifically to the transit lines, that it's not necessarily a hub.
Right. It is.
Right.
It is.
And on that very day of that meeting, there was a huge issue with the R train that it was not running that morning.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's in terms of it being transit oriented, it's.
Okay, here's the slide.
Right.
So near transit, specifically subway, has to be on over 5,000 square feet. What we're talking about R1 through R5. Has to be on a wide street, wide being 75 feet or more, or on the short end of the block. And these properties could be developed to 3 to 5 stories.
It's kind of what we have already. I mean, this is what most of 4th Avenue looks like.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, so Board 10, for the most part, is not really affected by this because the zoning on most of the wide streets already allows these kinds of buildings. There are a few places in the board when you get over towards where the high school was, over what's that?
Colonial Road.
Colonial Road.
Because they expanded the track.
Yeah, so a couple of things about it is that it's a half a mile from a transit station, which is like 10 blocks, which is quite far to be considered like, transit. And then of course it's the R train, which is a local and slow getting into Manhattan. In those cases, like on Colonial Road, if you have a 5,000 square foot lot or create a 5,000 square foot lot through tear down, you would be able to create a small apartment building, or you would be able to actually very much expand your home if it isn't big enough for you already. It's a pretty radical proposal. In this board, though, it only affects a handful of streets. In other boards, it's a bigger
I think we
deal.
looked at the R1 through R5, that we found that were greater than 75 feet. Those were Colonial Road, Bay Ridge Parkway, Marine Avenue, I think 92nd Street in some portions of the district, 7th Avenue, which are all, it's just exclusively residential. Ridge Boulevard.
Right.
So you'd have to create a 5,000 foot lot. There are some, very large houses, which this seems to incentivize potentially altering those houses. In theory, you could tear down a couple of houses, depending upon what you're talking about. It may not be very realistic to do that in some cases, but in some cases, what are beautiful historic homes in district, you may be incentivizing their demolition through this.
And didn't that happen on a few properties that were on, I believe it's 3rd Avenue, like close to the bridge? Josephine, didn't that happen over there where there were some older, cute,
Yeah, so those, right, that was
large
as a
homes?
development, yes, within the R7A district. And there were some that were demolished and replaced with, as part of as of right, development. Yes, James, from 3rd Avenue. There was also one on 4th Avenue, but that's already existing.
Right, so that's the kind of thing, though, that we're talking about that could potentially happen in these other locations.
Probably not get as, the buildings probably would not get as big, but in some of these locations, today, the only thing you can do there is a single family house. And under this, you could get a small apartment building. Don't know if that's realistic, but you certainly could get someone tearing down a big house and then say doing 4 or 6 units in, some sort of small sort of condo type building.
Would the market realistically make that feasible?
That I don't know. I think.
I mean, the houses you're talking about are 2, 3,
Yeah.
$4 million homes.
Well,
To
that's
get that lot size.
the question
So
is,
would someone spend that
In some
to
parts of the
develop
district.
that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's in some parts of the district and other parts of the district that we haven't looked at. In the northern end, I don't know.
It depends who wants to buy it.
well, the question is, if you tore down a $3 million house, and could replace it with, say, 4, $2 million houses, it might be worth it.
True.
You'd have to sort of look at how much you're paying for it, and what you
Yeah,
could.
I don't see developers seeing that as a way to make a fortune here. That's not I understand they can make some money, but that's a risky development. I
But
wouldn't risk that money.
But is that really, do you have comment to add to this? In other words, do we just want to, I don't want to say, yes, we approve. That's not where I'm.
No, I
leaning,
don't. I definitely don't want to approve it because we have this already. We don't
Okay.
need any more of this. We already have it.
In terms of making a recommendation, like what is considered transit zones? Do we specify that perhaps half a mile is just, it's too much of a.
Yes, exactly, yes.
Yeah, half a mile's kind of
Far, so
far.
what
Yeah.
would you suggest? Or
A
just
quarter of a mile.
a quarter of a mile?
So that's 5 blocks.
I would see what it impacts first.
What is it now?
Half a mile.
What is it now? Right now it's,
Well, it's new. It's a new
Oh,
concept.
It's a new concept.
sorry.
It doesn't
Oh.
exist yet.
But as
Okay.
proposed, blocks are half a mile.
How about 2 blocks, which is an
yeah,
eighth of
2
a mile?
blocks.
2 blocks.
Yeah, I'm not trying to just push you to an arbitrary number,
No, actually, it's a good conversation.
Yeah.
They exist, and if you want special favor to build a bigger housing development, well, then it's got to meet this criteria.
Probably flesh that out a little bit.
Right.
Any
So that
comments?
Fourth Avenue still looks like Fourth Avenue, but Sixth Avenue doesn't start looking like Fourth Avenue. You know, like,
Right.
as
I
you're
know,
saying, like,
yeah.
not expanding it. Thank you.
But even 2 blocks, Carmelo, take for example 85th Street between Third and Ridge. Those are all one-family homes on that block. That's within 2 blocks of the subway. That would,
They would not build on those streets. They would be limited to streets that are large streets, over
Right.
75 foot,
okay, thank you.
and they'd have to do it on a corner.
Yeah, I think
Or on a major thoroughfare like 4th Avenue.
that still confuses me. So it's a wide street or the short end of a street?
Yes, right.
So that if it's
Which
a
is
short
typically the corner.
75 feet, it could happen.
Yes.
Yes.
Don't do.
So you could build on 3rd Avenue, you could build on the corners.
I think here, most of your through streets are wide and the side streets are not wide.
Correct.
So when you get to this, to the short end of the block, you're already facing a wide street. So that's where this proposal takes effect. But on most of your wide streets, the zoning already gives whatever this transit-oriented development will give you. So it's really only in places where you have a 1 or 2 family zone district, which is what happens when you get close to the water. You get 1 and 2 family districts. But when you're closer to the subway, on the sort of avenues, the zoning already permits buildings of, multiple stories with multiple families.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So for example, so Colonial Road, I imagine is R2.
It's R2.
Bay Ridge, I'm sorry, 86th Street below Ridge is R3. R3 too, that's again, okay, I follow now. So perhaps other blocks, I don't know what Marine Avenue is off the top of my head. I could look at it, I was gonna say.
Can we just say we're not a traffic code? We're not a. Not a traffic.
I mean, I certainly think that,
Everybody close the transit station. No.
okay, so portions of Marine are R4B,
Trolley track.
R41.
So R4B gets you, I believe 2 FAR, and now you have 0.9 FAR, so it doubles
Doubles in size.
your FAR.
Yeah.
And increases the height. But the question would be, you need 5,000 square feet, do you have sites that big, or would you have to buy like 5 houses to do it?
Possible.
Churches,
I mean, churches are, yes.
schools, 4th Avenue, which has too much traffic.
The question really is that on some level, some of this is not, it's certainly looking at it today, not so feasible. We wouldn't expect it to happen. But by opening up the window here, you don't know what the future will hold and how things will go and what could happen to buildings. And, there's all sorts of unknowns that are out there, and you're putting this out there without really having a good understanding of what will happen in the future. And I guess the question is, well, why would you want to do that?
So better to leave out the recommendation for the radius, just
No, I think you'd want to do the radius to say, first of all, 10 blocks is too much. But then question, I mean, in the R2 district, which is a single family house district, to go from a single family house is only permitted there to allowing apartment buildings is a big change in the character of that neighborhood. And again, it may not be that likely, but still why would you want to permit it? The potential, if it does happen, is that it will change the character of that community from one of sort of single family homes to, one of apartment houses.
Thank you, Barry.
And the other thing I think I would say, and we probably should move on, otherwise we'll be here all night, is that, I think it might help for the board to sort of say that one of the things we like about our community is we have a mix of housing types. We have rent stabilized apartments, we have co-ops, we have condos, we have non-regulated units, and we have 1 and 2 family houses. And that you believe that the idea that people can buy a house in Brooklyn and raise their family in a 1 or 2 family house makes the community a good community to live in and a diverse community. And you don't really see any reason why you want to start messing with that basic sort of chemistry of the neighborhood.
So what Barry just said, I have in my notes. I'm not sure at this point where, but I definitely captured that sentiment many times before. It fit neatly in my outline. So, yes, we can include that. Moving on, again, we don't want to be here all night. The next one, I'm sorry, we just did transit oriented. Okay, so town centered zoning. We did not find anything really objectionable here. I mean, the understanding that would allow flexibility and there is potential for growth in these areas. I think that the area that would be most affected by this would be 13th Avenue.
13th Avenue, I think, was the one that was mentioned.
Yes.
As well as
86th Street.
not 86th Street.
Bay Ridge Parkway?
Was it Bay Ridge Parkway? Maybe Bay Ridge Parkway and 8th Avenue. A portion of
8th Avenue makes sense.
Where there are like 1-story commercial overlay that may not have buildings above. 13th Avenue has a lot of those.
Yeah, 8th Avenue as well, yeah.
My suggestion would be that this is not a bad thing, but commercial should be required at the first floor, and 4 stories is too much. I think 3 is more appropriate.
And I'd still put an unfavorable check mark on that one too.
Josephine, isn't there something like this happening, like where Spartan used to be on 8th Avenue?
Yeah, so as of right now, I think along 8th Avenue, you can add 2 stories.
It's R4.
It is let me see, hold on a second.
Because it looks like they're going to have some kind of commercial, according to like, I think there was something like on the the construction area around it, that there was going to be retail downstairs, and it does look like, I think, more than 3 stories high on the one side, and then it's lower on the other, because I pass that way on a daily basis.
Is this line?
Yes.
So
This is R5B and this little part is R41.
yeah, this is, I think, just residential, but here's the commercial all the way like 69th to.
Yeah, so the R5B, but I think they get additional development rights if they include commercial. So they have to get 5,000 square feet, so that may not be so easy to do.
Oh, here it is. So R5B current residential is 1.2. That would go up to 2.5.
With the commercial, you get 2.5.
You get 2.5.
So you get two FAR of commercial, but the height of R5B is 4 stories. No, 5 stories.
5 stories.
Oh. And the FAR, it goes up to 2.5.
2.5 if you do commercial.
So that could be the comment. They could answer to 3 stories.
Does that necessitate
lowering the FAR then? That is given?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, otherwise they wouldn't be able to,
Otherwise they-
they wouldn't be
yeah.
able to use it.
So. Any other, parameters for that, the town centered zoning? No, okay.
Should we agree to that the 3 stories would be more appropriate?
Well, I just noted that down. Does the committee agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, now moving into
Sure.
so next, moving along to medium and high density. In this category, actually, they list universal affordability preference. We did not discuss that. But I think in the medium density area, we did discuss 86th Street. I don't know if this fell into any other category, but our recommendation is that this corridor should not be developed piecemeal. And that it needs to be studied, particularly in order to maintain the vibrant commercial corridor that it has been. There may be an incentive to build to all residential, and then commercial would be an afterthought. Barry, you had spoken at length about this. Can you?
Yeah, what happens on 86th Street is that if you do affordable housing of up to 20, at least 25% of your residential units, you can go from a 7-story building to a 9-story building, which on 86th Street, most of your buildings are 2 and 3 stories today. But today you could do a 7-story building. So what could happen on 86th Street, particularly now when you have a number of prominent vacancies like the Modell's building, you could develop a fairly significant residential building, which could either be all affordable or portion affordable, depending on how you want to do it. And you probably, because you trigger parking requirements for the commercial, you probably would want to downsize how much commercial you put into the building. Which is really sort of says that they really have to sort of think about how the zoning works with providing sort of regional commercial. It's 86th Street is a street that attracts people from all over southern Brooklyn. It's a good thing. It's, a real asset to not only to Board 10, but to people from all over southern Brooklyn. And you want to keep that. And you don't just want someone to buy the Modell site and put up a 9-story residential building with, minimal amount of commercial. So, the argument there, I think, is that, you want the affordable housing, but you also want to maintain the commercial. So someone has to look at it and sort of figure out how to best accomplish that.
Is commercial even viable anymore though?
Well, that's the question. That's what someone has to think about. I mean, that's the question is whether, the future is it's not going to be a commercial corridor. And, but the question is, you want to look at it, you want to think about it, you want to talk to, the real estate people, are people interested in the site? Can you make a go of it? Find that out before you just sort of say, okay, build whatever you want there. And in the end, you're right. I mean, there may be a conclusion that it's not going to be the way it once was, unfortunately.
And let's not forget that the backs of those lots press up against the backyards of 1 and 2 family homes.
Not on 87th Street.
Between
85th,
between 5th and
Between 5th and 4th, and
yes.
between 3rd and 4th.
And
Definitely,
5th and 6th.
And 5th and 6th, yes.
right.
So even more reason to study it, although, as I said today, you could get a 7-story apartment building there, but because there's a fairly significant parking requirement, it's less likely to happen. Not impossible, but less likely to happen.
Because of what? It's not like less, Gina,
Parking.
Parking.
well,
Which is
Just
something
to-
they're taking away from everything.
Well, that's why the idea that someone might put a 9-story apartment building there becomes that much more feasible, because you wouldn't have to provide any parking. And if you put commercial in, you might have to provide parking. So it makes it much more likely, you might get some commercial, but it makes it much more likely you get just a straight 9-story residential building.
And people.
I don't
are
think there's any
already
reason to
frustrated.
encourage a 9-story building where you can already have a 7. So my
I agree
question,
with that. Totally 100%. That's a perfect, there's really no reason to change this.
Well, the reason they are changing it is to facilitate affordable housing. So they're basically saying, if you include affordable housing, you get to get a bigger building.
Whatever that So, we can express our concerns about this. This doesn't come in under any particular component, but we can.
Well,
Which one?
86th Street doesn't, but it does come in under the universal
Universal
affordability.
affordability, okay.
Yeah.
So,
And 86th Street has become a source of frustration for many people because of how long it's been that the Century 21, which was an anchor on that block for so many years, has now been vacant. And so unfortunately, the area, that vibrant shopping district has really, suffered because of it. And, that's been something that really we keep hearing about, that something's in the works, something's going to be coming soon. And unfortunately, it hasn't come. And now in the face of more changes and more zoning changes, I think people are really concerned as to whether it's going to happen, or
Right,
whether a developer is waiting for a better opportunity to present it.
Yeah, and I think that the issue with Century 21 is, before you do something sort of blind, someone should be talking to Century 21 and finding out, well, what are their intentions? And what would they like in terms of the zoning? Doesn't mean you have to do it, but at least you get some idea of where they're going. And then, they're out presumably trying to figure out the commercial market, and they're going to give you a good read as to where things are. So,
And they own other lots, they own the
Yeah.
lot of lots.
yeah, I mean, they certainly know, have a good idea about, and presumably are making no money at the moment except paying taxes. So, presumably, they want to do something with the property.
But as you said, there's the potential for making more money, to have more financial incentives once some of these changes happen. And I think that that's what's making people very concerned as well.
That's true, but they're not residential developers. They're in the retail and commercial business. So their interest, obviously, if someone makes them an offer to do residential, they'll do residential. But that's not really their business. So they're presumably going to try and do some sort of commercial development and make it work. But they may say they don't think it's viable, in which case then, you have to decide what's going to happen.
just as an aside, today I noticed that the building where TJ Maxx used to be is being renovated. So I wonder what's happening there.
Yeah,
I know what's happening. It's going to be a medical facility.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. Columbia Presbyterian or something like that.
Thanks, Barbara.
aside from recommending that 86th Street be studied, are there any other recommendations? for this?
Totally great idea. Totally a great idea. Totally agree with that. We may have to start thinking that a big, vibrant retail option for 86th Street, this is a total aside, I'm sorry, may or may not be the future. because the demand doesn't exist anymore. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm saying, but we may have to think that there are other options. But I agree with our board's recommendation.
Right, going to city. All right, big one is removal of parking mandates. I think I've captured all the issues. The EIS did not address this, not specifically. I mean, it presumes that everything will work out. I think there's one statement about it's possible people might not drive their personal vehicles. You know, it's possible they won't buy cars, or it's a very vague statement. Network is not sufficient. I mean, we heard from residents, we've discussed this. There's not enough parking as it is. This would incentivize additional illegal parking, paving. The ability to remove parking from 1 and 2 family homes would exacerbate the problem as well. The component where you no longer need a special permit, it would be as of right to remove parking if you were to develop affordable housing, like in the case that we mentioned, the 2 cases, Shore Hill and Bay Ridge Towers. So there's not only the elimination of the mandate to create new parking with new residences, there's the possibility to eliminate parking. So the existing car owners will be hampered. And then if you have new residents who own cars, it will be an additional burden. Oh, someone brought up a good point. I'm sorry, I don't remember who, that the idea if you'd like to make the streets more pedestrian friendly. Did you mention this, Barry? Oh, it was Barry, of course. What do you do with the cars? Now the cars that were formerly, would normally be in a garage or some other parking lot would be out on the streets. You know, people are creative in their parking. It might be on sidewalks. It's certainly in front of, at times, driveways, private driveways, hydrants. I've seen many things. So I think we have captured all of the concerns. Have I forgotten anything? I know that some of the comments from the public accurately, identify that there are many older residents in the neighborhood, and they do rely on their personal vehicles. There are also many medical offices. So there are people who are traveling to see their doctors, and they don't always, they do have their own vehicles. They cannot always rely on Accessory. That's another issue. Anything else?
How about a concession like affordable housing units that are added are exempt from parking?
That already is the case.
Oh, okay.
Is there something else I should be capturing in that?
So, yeah, so if you recall along this 4th Avenue, where you have the Walgreens and the supermarket.
Oh, you were mentioning the supermarket. Yes.
Yeah. So no, so the first issue is you have as you get down into the 90s, into the 90s, you have a number of sites that are large sites, which today they're retail sites. It's where Walgreens is, it's where Food Town is. Today you could build a fairly sizable apartment building. Under this proposal, you could do a much larger apartment building with affordable housing and no parking. And one thought on this was that the board could say, because obviously there are people who are concerned that you're too negative about affordable housing, the board could say, we would be willing, we have this, it's zoned already, we're supportive of if someone wants to build an affordable housing development or development with affordable housing here, we can live with that, but they can't build it without parking, that they have to put parking as part of the deal. As sort of a compromise, sort of saying, we'll live with it, but you have to have parking. The second point that I guess I made the other day is that you have a couple of large supermarkets, Food Town being one, the other is,
Brooklyn Market.
Brooklyn Market. Which are, you know, large markets that have a lot of variety that well service the community. You obviously have people of, you know, different ethnic backgrounds, and these stores try and service, you know, all the different tastes that people have in the community. And it would be a real loss to the quality of life of this community if those stores were to be disappear and just an apartment building shows up. And so it might make sense for the board to say the city should be actively pursuing maintaining those supermarkets. If those sites do get developed, that those supermarkets are put back. The fact that they have some parking actually helps the stores do more business. It makes it easier for residents. That some of these things, you know, the city should be aware of, that they're important to the community, and it shouldn't be just ignored going forward.
Okay. I did have that somewhere else on my outline. Okay, then we're okay with parking mandates now. I mean, in terms of our comments and anything else on that, no? Okay. Small and shared housing. Just my notes, I know that we discussed a lot of their concerns earlier on, but one thing that I wasn't clear about, at some point I thought DCP indicated that this wouldn't be an issue in CB10, that this would only apply to new buildings. Did I understand?
I think, yeah, I think what they said is that they have rules that will allow like ultra small apartments, but it would not be in CB10.
And it would only be new construction?
Only new construction. In effect, you could build a building, which you can't do today, a building of all like small studio apartments, which in some ways, you know, could make sense in Manhattan. And less you.
Do we want to comment on this though? I mean, it's a city, this is more citywide. I mean, it falls into citywide, but if it doesn't affect us, do we still want to make a statement about it?
This was with the shared kitchen.
Yes.
And bathroom, if I'm not mistaken, which was part of like what the illegal conversion issues were about, that, you know, unsafe places were being used and converted. And that was something that had come up as a huge issue for our community board, that people were very much against. And I realized that this would have to meet some kind of building code, but that was something that we have dealt with, and the negative effects of it. And I think it was in one of the emails that Josephine had shared that we received, that someone was saying that they were likening it to the tenements in the Lower East from the 1900s, and how that was phased out because people got really sick in these shared spaces. And they brought up about, you know, all the kinds of concerns about living in shared spaces that could happen now with the health and safety. So just sharing that.
I mean, we currently do have situations where roommates or people share apartments, but are there occupancy laws that this would be in direct, not work with? Or do we have a minimum occupancy or maximum occupancy laws?
Yes.
I don't know. We do.
But how?
So would these replace the occupancy laws?
No.
So basically this is kind of allowed already,
No.
correct?
It's not allowed, but most of this is governed through the housing maintenance code. And I think, and it's not really covered, they're changing the zoning, because the zoning actually says you can't have more than one unrelated person in an apartment, which of course is silly.
Right.
And, so that changing that, no one's enforcing it, has no practical effect. I think maybe what you do want to say is that there is this concern about, people taking apartments and renting out rooms and over occupying apartments. And that there needs to be some level of enforcement. And there has to be a stronger commitment on the part of the city to dealing with unsafe conditions because, throughout the district, this is happening a lot. And, you don't want to push people out into the street, but if they're in an unsafe situation, then, this is, like a ticking time bomb and things will go wrong.
Health and safety because of, the times we live in now.
Yes.
And then convert non-residential buildings to housing. This conversion of buildings is in any R and C4 districts. This wouldn't be in a C8. I mentioned those because those are what we have here in CB10. Actually, Barry, would you please go through this again? for
Sure,
us?
no problem. So what this is about is if you have a school, or say a church or say some community building dedicated to a church, or you have an office building, of some sort, like on 86th Street, you have maybe, 2 or 3 floors above a retail that are being used as office space. Under the rules today, they are considered conforming because they're a community facility or they're considered a commercial use. You can't convert them to residential because they don't meet the residential zoning requirements. And what they're doing is they're saying any building that was built before 1991, why 91? I have no idea, but before 1991, that is a community facility, i.e. a school, a church, a community house, or any commercial building, they can be converted to residential, regardless of what the underlying zoning is. They can't be expanded, but they can be renovated, retrofitted, and turned into a residential use. And if you have, sort of buildings that are not no longer viable as commercial or no longer viable as a community facility, you get into the situation of what do you do with the buildings? And you're basically either causing them to be demolished or you're sending them to BSA to get a variance. So what this would do is it would allow conversion.
I don't like it. Go to BSA.
No.
Go to BSA. If the building doesn't serve its purpose, go to BSA. You have a strong case.
What don't you like about it?
I don't like that they could do this as of right. I want them to have to go get a variance or go to BSA. I don't want people to be able to just build apartment buildings on commercial sites as of right. I don't trust anybody doing stuff as of right, but certain things should be as of right. But to convert a commercial space to housing would require, I think, some study, and that's what the BSA would do, right?
So-
They'd look at it.
So these rules exist today in much of Manhattan and in a number of neighborhoods in Brooklyn, including, Gowanus Park Slope, Dumbo, as well as Leon City and Astoria. And of course, those places have a lot of like old loft buildings and the like, but they also have schools and things like that that are no longer viable. And it's been fairly effective in doing adaptive reuse of buildings, which was part of the concept here of rather than having buildings being demolished, because originally the thinking was, well, if a building outlived its usefulness, you just tear it down. And, some of these buildings, have a lot more life in them if they can just change their use and make it and are allowed to adopt. So, I would argue that it is a preservation, for people who are concerned about historic preservation. And also, it allows buildings to achieve what, find their use if their use changes.
I agree with Barry.
I agree with you, Barry, but I don't think it needs to be as of right. I don't see why they, listen, I'm full disclosure. I'm on the board of one of the local houses of worship with a decent sized property. I don't see any reason that I can arbitrarily contract with a developer to develop that site without any kind of input from the community. And I'm on the board. So I'm going against my own interest by saying that, because there might be people someday who would want to do that. I would never want to do that. But why would I allow anyone to do that, to make such a major change without going to some sort of authority to look at it?
It's not changing the building, it's
changing the use.
Reusing the building. If they
Yes,
want to
but
actually
changing the use.
property, then it's a different story.
But it's changing the use of the property.
Yes.
Right,
So-
that's a big deal. Are we going to add parking for the housing? Do we add parking?
The rules as written, they're getting rid of all parking requirements whatsoever, so no.
So they could turn around an old house of worship that's no longer really being used as a house of worship with a small congregation. And we've seen it done already. We saw what happened with the Green Church, but they did it for a school, and kind of that makes more sense. But if as of right, they're allowed to develop housing without parking, it sounds like we're opening up a can of worms without allowing them to just say, hey, go to the BSA, go file for a variance.
But on the other hand, think of all those buildings in Manhattan, the office buildings that are being converted to housing. So this sort of thing is going on.
But we're not Manhattan.
I think
No,
we
I
should be
know, but-
doing it. I think we should be doing everything we can to encourage adaptive reuse of existing buildings.
I agree, with some oversight.
I agree with that other guy. I do.
So,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
and any parameters then on this one with the adaptive reuse? I mean, we can just comment that we support this one, but we have conditions, or are there conditions?
Yeah, our condition should be that there should be strong oversight on these sites. This is special use. Adaptive reuse is not something that you just kind of wave a magic wand over. This is something special where you have a commercial or an infrastructure or an institutional building that you want to convert to housing. There should be some oversight. There should be some community involvement. There should just not be an as of right situation.
All right, Carmela, actually, Barry has something
Yeah, I
there.
was gonna make a suggestion. How about they can convert the building, but before they do it, they have to notify the community board 60 days before they file for a building permit. So they have to come before the community board, explain what they're doing, and get input from the community.
Oh, I guess. I mean, if that gets us oversight, I don't know if that gets us oversight, does it?
Well, it gives the community the ability to see, well, one, what they're doing. Two, to say, oh, but that's a very bad intersection across the street. You really need to change how you're configuring this, because it's, and from the standpoint of the developer, it might actually be helpful to them.
But Barry, ultimately, once it's as of right, they really
At the
don't
end
have to listen to us.
do.
Right.
I guess if that's our only recourse, yes.
So many of these topics that we're coming upon all cause me to reiterate in my own mind that the parking needs to remain a requirement.
100%.
For sure.
So that will be emphatic with the parking. Do I need to emphasize it for each? I mean, we could. Once, for each section, say parking should not be eliminated, or the mandate for parking should not be eliminated.
For sure.
So, as Barry suggested, the request a 60-day review, a CB in front of a CB.
In front of our committee?
Just, yeah. Okay. The next one, actually, we didn't discuss, I think, as a committee, but it was under miscellaneous. Although campus infill is part of citywide, we've not discussed that, but under miscellaneous, railroad right of way. And I am less familiar with this one, so once again, I'm going to have to ask Barry.
Okay, so today, if you want to build over a railroad right of way, which you obviously have at 65th Street, I want to build in a rail yard, which I don't know that you really have in Board 10, but you have, say, in by the Brooklyn Army Terminal, I guess that's Board 7. If you wanted to build over that, it's a special permit. And the special permit gets into, first of all, are you going to interfere with railroad operation? And second, if you get to look at the site plan of the proposal. Under this proposal, if your site is more than 4 acres, and actually one more thing about it is if the property was used for railroad use, either a yard or for tracks or whatever, on a date certain in 1962, which was when it was passed, it requires a special permit where the site plan must be approved by the City Planning Commission, comes before the community board, and ultimately the city council. Under this proposal, if the site is less than 4 acres, they would just need basically a letter from the chair of the City Planning Commission, from the railroad, from DOT, stating that their proposal does not interfere with railroad operations. If the site is more than 4 acres, then it would be an authorization from the City Planning Commission, which means that it doesn't go to the City Council. It just gets approved by the City Planning Commission. And they would be looking at site plan in terms of what's being built on it, but it would not get to the City Council. That's the proposal.
We just had this
Yes.
in front of our board.
And
And what did they end up doing, Josephine? Even
So-
with it going to the BSA?
No, it didn't go to the BSA. So what happened here was 6200 8th Avenue, which is a former rail yard, that the board voted to change the zoning from an M1 district to a C4-2A. Many years ago, because there was a developer who wanted to build a Home Depot and then, some stories above it. It was very contentious. It ended up working out to a consensus agreement, after many, many meetings, to have a building that reflected a lot of what community had inputted, at the time. And there were many on the board who were concerned that agreeing to a zoning text change, other than the developer's proposal, that if that were to fall through, there could be a very different type of development at the site and that we shouldn't proceed with the rezoning. But what city planning told us at that time is that we would always have the special permit. So there would be an opportunity for community review always at this site, this former rail yard site. Another developer came, had a very different proposal, and by the way, the board did support the special permit. At that time, it moved on to a second developer who, there was a lot of issues there that fell through. Developer number 3 came to the board, and all of a sudden, there was no special permit required because they had presented information to the board that the rail yard had not been in use before post 1962. We had information that we did research on that said that it did operate as a rail yard, after that date. But ultimately what happened was city planning said, no, we stand with the developer, and this 28-story building can continue to be built as of right without a special permit. So here, this change would say basically that future development, whether it's portions of this lot that are not developed that would be eligible for further development, or nearby sites, this is 6200 8th Avenue, there's some areas along 62nd Street, if it was developed smaller, less than 4 acres, would not require any type of public review. And I think the concern that we expressed at that time was that this is an environmental justice area. There are environmental concerns. There's certainly, street capacity concerns, traffic concerns with developing such a large building in a small area. And actually, that's how it was explained to us. The reason for the special permit was because these types of sites tend to be able to develop a lot. And it was that first time where the rezoning is where we learned that zoning is forever. So these changes are forever and they're permanent. And I think those concerns still exist from people, now it's a very different community. It's a lot more immigrant based, and there was a lot of frustration that there was not an opportunity for a public review in the form of a special permit. So in this, am I saying it right, Barry? I think in this instance, the bottom line of which is this proposal removes the special permit in a very clear way, removes the special permit requirement.
I think we should request that there is public review. I don't know if we request to keep the special permit in place.
But the question is whether you want it to go to the city council or not.
I think it should.
So that would be through a
Special.
special permit, not an authorization.
Yeah.
Right.
That affects 65th Street too.
65th Street,
Rail tracks that are up the rail.
if there were to be development there.
They could do that.
They would develop on top of it, yeah.
As far as the other categories, we did not discuss those. I don't know that they are applicable to CB10. At this point, though, I would, in the interest of time, I'd like to, committee doesn't have any other specific comments. I know that there are questions from, I don't have comments in the room. Questions, anybody from the public? That
We could do that,
read it before we.
if that's okay.
But committee first, do you have anything else? Yeah, I will be working on this,
Yeah.
but
I apologize. I also have another meeting to head to. So thank you for your time, and I'll catch up with you guys. Thank you.
you have a good night.
You too.
Yeah, Victoria?
Let her go first.
Go right ahead. It's okay.
I guess I just feel like I'm really upset about the public process. That I spent a lot of time on the zoning. Worked to the community board, Joanne worked on it, Doris, so many people, Judy. And this is something city planning suggested to us to go from the special district to the contextual. So I feel like the public process has been totally eliminated, and it really upsets. I also looked at city planning's site. They've identified 339 neighborhoods in New York City. And so we talk about diversity all the time, and yet you put this one thing. I have a problem with that. I have a problem with, this is not going to create affordable housing. And I feel like we do have examples already in our neighborhood where people have illegally subdivided. They give $200,000 above ask with the intention of subdividing. It has made our property, real estate taxes are so high in the neighborhood, we're paying 60% more than parks sold for properties that last for like 40 years. So we're making every square inch of property more expensive. And yet those people that are doing this are not contributing to the tax base. So I have a lot of problems with it. And I think we have examples. I feel like what I'm doing now is I'm working with Arthur from the newspaper. I'm putting 3 videos together. The first is how Bayreuth should be a model community and we should replicate what we have. We have so much supportive housing here, Mitchell-Lama apartments. We have mixed, diverse economics, ethnicities, and also ages, and our neighborhood is working. And I think we can tip it. So I'm very concerned about that. I think they should be looking at us as a model community.
Thank you.
No, so,
Go ahead.
well, thank you for letting me sit in. I went to the meeting on June 4th, and it was the first meeting I attended because when I saw the city of Yes, and I did a lot of research on it, it's like a C40 city. C40 cities are all over, New York is part of them. I do not like the whole concept of any of it, because eventually down the road, there is an agenda behind it. It may look nice. Oh, it's for apartments, it's for this, it's for that. They were trying to make affordable housing and all this other things. It's not. There's a bad agenda at the end of this. I want my car. I like to know that I can get in my car and go somewhere. I don't want to get on a bicycle and make sure I can go through communities on a bicycle. If I choose to do it, wait a second, if I choose to do it. But you don't take my choice away and say, no, you can't do that now. Bad girl, you have a gas guzzler. Or I don't have an EV. Okay, so this whole concept of the city of Yes, in my mind, is to bring in 15-minute cities like they're trying to do all over the place.
What's a 15-minute city? Oh, 15 minutes to get access to it.
Anywhere you go, 15 minutes to go to the health store, if you want to go to this place, and you're trying to put everybody in one spot and to make that happen.
We already have something lower than that. It works.
Listen, it's fine.
Yeah.
But then down the road, what about carbon credits? So maybe I don't do something. And they say to me, well, you can't go over to Bensonhurst now. Why can't I go over to Bensonhurst now? If you read the whole dynamics of this whole city of Yes and this whole C40 cities, it is eventually to bring you to an endpoint. To me, that's the endpoint. I don't like it at all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is there any?
Yeah, there's, I'm sorry, there's one attendee who has a hand raised and then
Okay.
we'll, allow, if we have quiet, we'll allow her to speak. Daniela Sarkis, we'll allow you to speak. You could be able to unmute yourself.
And I don't need to.
Hi.
Hi, Daniela.
Hi,
Do you have-
thank you for allowing me to speak. So I was at the meeting the other night as well at Fort Hamilton, and I want to thank you and your team for putting together all this material. I am very, very well read on this subject. My daughter attends Visitation Academy, and the parent associate, I was the president of the Mothers Club. We have been very, very involved in watching this. We have had many parents on the news speaking with news crews about this, trying to get publicity, because we believe that campus is literally in one of the renderings for one of the proposed sites and how that property could be used, and am concerned because of the makeup of our board and people who are connected with our school. We're very involved in the Nathan's deal and other deals. There's been developers at our site constantly, and we think that there is a real agenda there for our school. That's the number one thing. Overall, as well, for the community, there are so many components of this to me that are problematic. I think you've already stated that there's not a one-size-fits-all approach, but the accessory dwelling units are a major concern to me. I would hope that maybe we could maybe even reach out and have someone from, I don't know if the fire department has a union or a representative. To me, that's putting our firemen at risk. They're going to have to deal with, what kind of wire, who's going to check these things? As it is, there are, many of you, some people on your, Josephine has actually spoken to me before, because I have a neighbor and houses near me that are constantly shoving people in and are illegal conversions. Who's going to monitor this? Now it's going to be legal, basically, to just live anywhere, share a kitchen. This is just not the way our community is set up. And I think that this is a much larger political issue, quite honestly. We have a situation where we have migrants. The name, I understand, I saw that it was never mentioned at the meeting. I think it was like almost like the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. We have people that we have no housing for. They're in tents. If housing is built everywhere, then all of a sudden maybe they can be given vouchers. They'll be staying in all these places. As it is, they're taking over every hotel in the city.
Thank you, Daniela. Thank you. I've jotted down all of your concerns. And thank you for being there on Tuesday, June 4th.
So it was an intensity.
So I'd like to move on to a recommendation and a motion. Would anyone like to make a motion?
No. The motion is to take a vote on this. Well, what's?
All right, okay, so we have, once again, in front of us, 4 options. It's favorable, favorable with conditions, unfavorable, or unfavorable with conditions. And as I explained at the beginning of the meeting, it's the same thing as with economic opportunity, and my suggestion was want to choose one of those options, but perhaps not necessarily provide, or was it conditions or modifications? Modifications, I'm sorry. Not necessarily provide the modifications with the vote, but certainly do as we did last time, compile our concerns and then specific comments on each component. So this would be a motion, Anne?
I'm not going to make a motion exactly, but I do think it's more honest of us to disapprove the entire proposal.
I agree.
I agree.
I don't think we've said one thing, maybe one or two. I don't think, but basically we have not mentioned any positive aspects to this as it affects our community. I think we're opposed.
Okay, is that a motion?
Yes.
So
I'll
there's,
second it.
Second,
okay, so the motion is to disapprove or to vote unfavorable for the entire City of Yes housing opportunity proposal.
Yes.
yes,
List concerns,
Yes.
Yes.
add comment for each of the components that we discussed, whether that
Totally.
was
Yes.
concerns, but also making those specific requests that we discussed.
Yes. And today's only the 11th. So if you need our help, and I'll speak for us all, if I may, for a moment, we can certainly have another meeting if there's something you need from us.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne.
and also, I'd be willing to come in the office and help you set it up.
Thank you. I appreciate the offer of help, but let's go ahead and vote. So, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Well, aye. Okay.
Aye.
Ibrahim?
Yeah, aye. Yes.
Aye, aye.
Okay,
Thank you. Okay, very
the
good.
motion carries.
Thank you all.
Thank you all once again for
Thanks,
your time.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks,
you have a
everybody, for having such patience.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.